In this video, I'm going to show you some of the Chrome development tools that can help us write JavaScript. I'm going to give you a quick overview of some very simple JavaScript. We're going to cover while loops, if statements, and functions, and we're going to write a simple counterstring generator. So just in case you don't know what a counterstring is just a string of text where the asterisks in that string of text tell us what position we're in. So this would be a counterstring that says I'm at position 1. This would be a counterstring that tells me I'm finishing at position 3. So this asterisk is at the 3rd position, so this is a 3-length counterstring. And what we're going to do is we're going to write some code to automatically generate these, because these are very useful for when we're testing. If I take a string like this, paste it into a field, let's add it into a field where we can see, then I can start testing the length of that field and see how much is applicable, and if it shows me any errors or truncation, then I'll see it truncated in the string. It's a useful string to work with. It started with James Back, and he's written a tool to do that. I'll put some links to information in the video description, but let's just get started with coding. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the sources tab that's built into Chrome. So let me start completely from scratch. So here's a web page. This is what I'm going to use to do my basic testing, but it really doesn't matter what page I'm in. So I'm going to do inspect. We've got the dev tools up. I'm going to go into sources, and then if I go into the snippets view, we've got a built-in editor. So I'm just going to create a new snippet, and I'm going to call that Counterstrings. Let's rename this. Now, I can write code in here and run it from here, and this will be my editor. So just to start, I'm going to just say console.log. Now, if I run this, down here, run snippet, that will run that JavaScript, and we can see the result in the console. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a counterstring function. So I'm going to say function, I'll call it get counterstring, and there we go. So there's a function. It doesn't do anything. So let's just demonstrate. This is going to return hello. If I run this, nothing happens because there's no code being executed. From the console, I could run get counterstring. There we go. Hello. Now I tend to put semicolons after all JavaScript statements. You don't have to put it after everything, but it means I don't have to remember when I do it and when I don't. So this is a function that we've just called, get counterstring. Doesn't take any arguments. I haven't put any arguments in there, but it returns hello. So I can see that in the console. What I really want is an argument that says count. So that I can then say I want a counterstring. In fact, let's call it length. Let's not call it length. Let's call it count. I want a counterstring which is going to count up to this value. And to just demonstrate that that's getting passed in, this is going to return hello count. So let's say get counterstring. Now if I don't pass anything in, it comes back as hello undefined. So I want to pass in a value, get counterstring hello 5. So now I've got a variable where I can work with it. That's got the length of the counterstring that I want. So I'm going to create a variable in here called counterstring, which is going to be an actual string, and it's going to return it's going to store the counterstring that I'm going to generate. So I could return that now. So what I'm going to do, what I'm just trying to do is as I write my code, it's going to be runnable most of the time. So what I want to do is I want to iterate over that count. So I'm going to say while count is greater than 0, because I'm going to change that variable. So now anything that's in here is going to run while the count variable is greater than 0. So the way that I'm going to build this up is I'm going to create a string that has the last value. So say I say counterstring 100. I'm going to write out asterisk 100 because that's going to be the position. Then I'm going to do count minus whatever the length is here, so 4. So that'd be count minus 4, which gives me 96. And then I would append to that string asterisk 96 and just keep going. And I'm going to build up the counter string in reverse, and we're just going to reverse the string at the end. That's going to be the easiest way of getting a counter string. So let me do that. So the first thing I want to do then is I'm going to create a variable for what I'm going to append. So I'm going to say append this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make mistakes as I go so that you can see it being debugged and you can see the reasons for some of this code. So I'm just going to say asterisk plus, and the value that I want is stored in the count variable, and I want that to be a string. And then, so what I'm going to do just to illustrate this, let's append that. Let's do counterstring equals counterstring plus append this. There we go. So that will build up this. That will start building up the string. Then what I want to do is say count equals count minus the length that we had in this append string. Append this, and because it's a string, it has a property called length. So if I run that, hopefully, if I've done this right, we will see us iterate through, we won't have an infinite loop, and everything will be good. So let me run that. Undefined, so let me call CounterString, so get CounterString, let's see, 5. So we've got the CounterString, but it's not quite what we want, because 5 is not at the first position. What we want is 5 at the end position, so I have to reverse the string. Now the easiest way to reverse a string in JavaScript is to do a couple of things. So first of all, and this is non-intuitive, but you could do a web search for how to reverse a string in JavaScript and you'll be able to just copy and paste this code. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that string into an array first, simply because the array has a reverse function, and then I'm going to convert that array back into a string. So let me run that. In fact, what I'm going to do to help me debug this as I run this, I'll just put in a call here. So get CounterString 5. Right. So now we can see we've got a counterstring. The counterstring is 1 asterisk. So that's not right. So that asterisk isn't at position 1. So we've got something not quite correct here yet. So then we've got 5 asterisks, 3 asterisks. So there's a few things. We're getting on track, but we've got a bug here that we have to sort out. So how can we sort that out? What's going on here? So this is saying position 5, then that is string 2, so then this is position 3, but that's not position 3, that's position 4. So what have I got here? I've got get counterstring 5. What is the length of that? So I've got a 6th length string here when I only wanted 1. So we've got a bug in here. So I think the issue is, so 5 would be in the first place, then it would come down, then it would be 3. So I think the issue is going to be here. So what this is basically saying is, when I get to the point that I need to do 1, I'm generating asterisk 1, but I've only got 1 character position left, but the length is actually 2, so I'm putting in 1 extra string. So what I need to do here then is, when I come to append this, I don't want to append the full string, I just want to append the amount that is left. So let's do that. So if the append this dot length, if the length of the string that I'm about to add on is more than the space that I have, then I want to do something. Not sure what I want to do yet, but I want to do something. So I'm going to say what I actually want to append is just part of that string. So what I want is a substring. So in JavaScript, I've got a substring method, and what I want is 0 to the actual length that I want. So if count is 1, I only want 0 to 1, which is 1 character. So if I put that in, count append this dot length. All right, let's try that. Let's see what happens now. No, that didn't work. So this might be a good time to see how we debug things. So I'm going to put a breakpoint there. Let me run the snippet now. So we can now see that we're going through in a breakpoint mode. We've got our debug controls here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So I can see all the local variables that we've got. I can see let's get rid of the console, I don't need that for the moment. So this is the first time through the loop. So count come in and says 5. We've created the counter string *5. Count is greater than 0, so we're in here. So what we're saying now is if append this.length is greater than count, so append this.length is 2, that is not greater than count, therefore it's okay. So let's step over this line. So that's basically just going to decrement the count for length 2. So that should then bring us down to 3. So count is now 3, so it's going to create the string *3. Great. So it's going to add that onto the counter string, which is what we want, *3. So leaving us after this. So count is now going to be 1. So we've got 1 character left. Now when we append this, *1, so there's our problem. So we've appended this onto the counter string before we've taken any action. So that's the problem. So what I really want to do is have this appending happening after the if statement. So it's going to create the string that we want to append. Then if that string is too long, we're going to truncate it. Then we'll append it onto the counter string. Let me get rid of this. So if I just run that to completion, then we're running over here in a VM because we did breakpoints. So let me close that down to get the code actually back. So now if I run this, there's no breakpoint set. Let's run that. *3, *5, *. So that's what we want. Now we have a 5 length string. So I can say get counter string 5 length, and it tells me it's 5. Great. So are we done? Of course not, because we haven't done enough testing, and I'm pretty sure there's stuff still wrong here. So at the moment we've only done strings that have got 1 digit. So let's put in a string with more digits. So let's do counter string, let's do 11. Counter string 11 length, so that's given us 11 back. So we've got the right length. Let's see if we get the right string. To 11, okay, that looks good to me. 13. Okay, so 11 wasn't necessarily the best test data, because when we reverse 11, we get 11. Now that I've got 13, I can see that these numbers are reversed because we're doing a reverse string at the end, and we're actually reversing the number digits. So what I need to do is I need to reverse this before I add it onto the string. So I could copy and paste this up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a function first that says reverse. So I'll call it reverse string. Then I'll give it a string called reverse me. Let me take this. So it's going to be reverse me dot split dot reverse dot join. Return reverse me dot split dot reverse dot join. And then instead of return counter string, I'm going to say reverse string counter string, because we're going to use that function that we just put out. And let's make sure that this does what we expect. We run that, get counter string 13. So it behaves the same because we haven't fixed the problem. So now what I want to do is this, reverse string. And I don't want to reverse the whole string with the asterisk, I just want to reverse the number so that the number is going in reverse. So let me just make this easier to test. 13, run this. So there we go. So now at position 13, then we come down, then we've got the values. So this is 3 is at position 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so that looks better. Now we've got the reverse string in place. So that seems fairly clean. So if I now do get counter string 100. I'll get a counter string with 100. Now I've got the issue that it can be hard for me to test this because I don't have all the examples. I could find another CounterString program to help me, but I'm going to pretty much at the moment assume that because that looks okay, because I've done these little tests, that's good enough. We may find extra bugs as we go through, but we've basically written a CounterString function here. And I can execute this, and I can execute this from the snippets. So let's make this a little bit more useful. What I'm going to have it do is I'm going to, instead of doing a straight counter string, I'm going to have a prompt, and the prompt is going to give me a count. So I'm going to say count equals window.prompt, because prompt is what we use to get an input dialog up in JavaScript. So I'm going to say give me the counter string length that you want me to calculate, and let's have a default of 100. So now when this runs, what it's done is it's put this into memory so we can use it. It's put the counter string function into memory so we can use it. There'll be a prompt come up. Let's double check. Prompt counter string length 100. Okay, there we go. And nothing happens to that variable. So what we want to do then is get counter string for that count. 67. And there it is. Now, the reason we're seeing it in here, I'm not console logging it, it's just because that's the last value that is generated from the JavaScript. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log that out to the console. Console log get counterstring count. Now, what we have here, get counterstring length 100. Now we actually have a tool that we could use. This is a snippet. This will sit there in my browser. I can paste this somewhere so that I've got it active if I want. Then if I'm testing something, I say I'm testing this comment text area comment, and I go, I want to see how that comment handles 1,000 characters. I'm going to do 1,000, say OK. It's going to get logged out into the console. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in here. Then submit the form. So now in this page, it submitted all the characters, so that submission doesn't have any problems with that length. Good to know. But now we've got a little tool. We've written a little tool in JavaScript to help us. We haven't had to learn a lot of JavaScript. We've learned about functions. Functions return values so that we can use them. They take arguments. I could have multiple arguments in here if I wanted to. If I don't pass in a value for an argument, it becomes undefined. The counter string, and we walked through the logic, but this says given a count value, while the count is greater than 0, append the asterisk and that actual value turned into a string and reversed to handle multiple digits. Then we really want to append that onto the counter string, provided the length of what we're going to append is not greater than the number of characters left. If it is greater than the number of characters left, shorten it to that number of characters. Now I'm pretty sure this only ever happens when it is 1, but if we ever change the counter string character, then it might be longer than that. So this is more generic than it needs to be, but will help us in the future, but is more complicated than it probably needs to be, so it could be a source of bugs, so there's a potential risk in there. Then what we do, having appended it, we need to make sure we go around the loop and end the loop. So we're going to say count equals count minus the length of things we just appended. So count is going to get ever gradually smaller. Then once we've created our string, we just want to reverse it and return it so that we've got the counter string available for any function, any code that calls it. In this case, it's a console.log. Well, what we could do is we could extend this to make this even more useful. So in JavaScript, there is the concept of document, which is the entire page. Then we've got the concept of the active element, and you can see that that's the text area that I last clicked on. Now with text input fields, they have an attribute or property called value. So I can say document active element value equals this text. And it's put this text in there. So you can probably see where I'm going. Instead of using this text, I could put in the counterstring. So here we're logging the counterstrings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this counterstring that's returned into a variable. Returned, in fact, let's just call it counterstring. Counterstring equals counterstring count, console.log, counterstring, then our magic, which is going to be document.activeElement.value equals counterstring. So let's see how our tool does now. So if I go into this text area, I run my script. What do you want? I want, we did 1,000, so let's do 2,000. Let's really push it on the first test. And there we go. So it's logged the counterstring out, and it's set the value of the field in here to be 2,000. So we've actually written a tool. It's a very simple tool, sits there in the script snippets. You've seen basically how to debug these things. You don't need a lot of JavaScript in order to be productive and create tools and scripts that can help you. The reason I like JavaScript is that it's in the browser. I don't need to install any developer tools. I don't install any SDKs. As long as I keep things simple, it's all in there. Now, everything that I've covered here is a result of me going, dear search engine, how do I reverse a string in JavaScript? Dear search engine, how do I get input values from the user with JavaScript? Dear search engine, how do I log information to the development console? Dear search engine, how do I set the text of an active element or the element with the current focus, right? So it's just a result of know what you want to do the web search, find the code, paste it into your code, and then own it to make sure it's simple and to make sure that you understand it so that you know what it's doing. Wrap things in simple functions as much as you can to make it easy to understand and reuse. But now we have a simple tool. Now what I'm going to show you in another video after this is how we're going to take this and we're actually going to create a Chrome extension which will use this code so that when we right click on a field, we can add a counterstring into that field. Now some caveats about this. Document.activeElement.value may not work on every form. Let's see if we can find a form. So I've just done a search because I'm looking for examples of forms that have got the max length attribute. So here's one, max length attribute, try it for yourself. So here's a simple form with the username. So what I'm going to do is inspect. Here's our snippet. Well, let's get our snippet up. Sources, counterstrings, put the focus in there, run the script, 100. There we go, that worked. So when the tool is running in snippets, we can paste this in here. One of the things that's an issue though, this max length is 10, and our script has just put in 100. That's because we're editing the DOM directly. So we've bypassed the max length control. If you're testing, that's good, right? Because that allows us to easily bypass the max length control. But we're not doing exactly what the user would do. Let me run this. If as a user, I try and type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I can't do any more, right? Because when the user works, they trigger different events. In theory, in order for this to simulate user input, it would need to trigger key down, so key press, is it key down, key press, key up? It would need to do that for each of the characters that are in the string, and then we'd be simulating the user input. So that might be an extension that you want to activate. What we might choose to do is add this into the clipboard. I'm choosing not to add it in the clipboard, I'm just passing it straight in as the value, because pasting it in, right, so let me do this accurately, get the first character. So if I paste this in, we can see that the paste is truncated. So when we're changing the DOM directly, we're bypassing some of these controls. If I clicked submit and there was still JavaScript validation, that should pick it up, right? Because the value is bigger than what is expected. But really, a lot of the time what we're interested in is the server side, and this is making it easier to test the server side processing. So it's just a caveat to watch out for, given the way that we've hacked this into the DOM. But this script is very simple. It would be great if we could find a way of just plugging this straight into an extension, and we'll look at that in the next video.